House Greyjoy, the fierce, iron-born rulers of the seas in Westeros. Known for their raiding, pillaging, and independence, they lived by the motto, "We do not sell." But in real life, there was a group of warriors who did the same, and they didn't just rule one island. They terrorized the coast of Europe. Meet the Vikings, the seafaring warriors of the north. Today, we're comparing House Greyjoy to the real-life Viking clans, the ultimate battle of iron and blood. From violent raids to independence from the crown, let's explore how the Greyjoys and the Vikings shaped their world through fear and dominance. Raiding as a way of life. House Greyjoy and the Vikings had something in common. Raiding wasn't just a means to an end, it was a way of life. While the Starks and Lannisters built castles and fought over thrones, the Greyjoys took what they needed by force. The Vikings, too, lived by the same code. They didn't sell, they took. The Greyjoys, under the motto, "We do not sell," raided the coastlines of Westeros, taking gold, food, and resources from other houses. In the same way, the Vikings launched brutal raids across Europe, targeting monasteries, villages, and towns. They were feared across the seas, just as the Greyjoys were feared in the Iron Islands. For both the Greyjoys and the Vikings, raiding wasn't just about survival, it was about asserting dominance. The Greyjoys' identity was tied to the sea, just like the Vikings, who believed their strength came from their ability to navigate and control the oceans. They lived hard, died hard, and believed in the strength of iron and blood. The Ironborn culture versus Viking culture. Both the Ironborn and the Vikings had cultures deeply rooted in the sea and warfare. For the Greyjoys, the Iron Islands were a harsh, unforgiving land, much like the Viking homelands in Scandinavia. The sea wasn't just a part of their world, it was their lifeblood. It shaped their identity, their politics, and their belief systems. The Ironborn, like the Vikings, believed in strength and independence. Leadership wasn't passed down by bloodlines. It had to be earned. In the Iron Islands, rulers were chosen through the Kingsmoot, where the strongest and most capable would rise to lead the fleet. Similarly, Viking leaders were often chosen by their strength in battle and their ability to command loyalty. And just like the Vikings, the Ironborn didn't believe in sitting idle or tending to crops. They believed in action, in taking what was theirs through force. The Greyjoys and the Vikings shared a warrior culture that prized courage, strength, and the glory of battle. Whether raiding coastal towns or defending their homeland, their identity was forged in conflict. The Greyjoy rebellions versus Viking independence. Independence was at the core of both House Greyjoy and the Vikings. The Greyjoys famously rebelled against the Iron Throne, refusing to be ruled by a mainland king. For them, the Iron Islands were sovereign. No king in the south could command their loyalty. This defiance led to brutal wars, but the Ironborn held on to their fierce independence. The Vikings, too, valued their independence. While they raided and traded with kingdoms across Europe, they resisted any attempts to control or subjugate them. Much like the Greyjoys, Viking chieftains led their people in defiance of kings and emperors. They valued their freedom and autonomy above all else, and any attempt to take it from them was met with violence. Whether it was Theon Greyjoy rebelling against the Iron Throne or Viking leaders defying European rulers, both groups fought to preserve their way of life. For the Greyjoys and the Vikings, submission was not an option. They were born to be free, even if that freedom came at a bloody cost. Euron Greyjoy versus Viking raiders, brutality and ambition. Now let's talk about the most brutal figure of House Greyjoy, Euron Greyjoy. Euron, known for his ambition and cruelty, wanted more than just the Iron Islands. He sought to conquer all of Westeros, launching devastating raids and using fear as his greatest weapon. In this way, he mirrors the most ambitious Viking raiders, warriors who didn't just seek gold and glory, but entire kingdoms. Like Euron, Viking warlords such as Ivar the Boneless and Ragnar Lothbrok weren't satisfied with small raids. They launched invasions into England and France, taking over lands and carving out their own kingdoms. Euron's desire for the Iron Throne echoes the ambition of these Viking leaders, who wanted to reshape the world through conquest. Euron's cruelty and thirst for power may have made him a villain in Westeros. But for the Vikings, these qualities were essential for survival. Both Euron and the most brutal Viking warlords understood that power comes from fear, and they used it to devastating effect. The legacy of the Greyjoys and the Vikings. born of the sea. The sea was the true legacy of both House Greyjoy and the Vikings. For both, the ocean was their battleground, their home, and their greatest weapon. The Greyjoys' mastery of the seas made them powerful in Westeros, just as the Vikings' naval prowess allowed them to raid and conquer lands across Europe. But even the greatest seafaring warriors couldn't escape the changing tides. Just as the Greyjoys faced defeat at the hands of more powerful forces, the Viking Age eventually came to an end as European kingdoms grew stronger and more organized. Their way of life, built on the power of the seas, began to fade. Yet the legacy of both the Greyjoys and the Vikings lives on. Their stories of independence, strength, and the brutal power of the sea remain legendary. Born of the sea, these warriors were unstoppable in their prime, leaving behind a legacy of iron, blood, and salt. House Greyjoy and the Vikings, two groups of seafaring warriors who dominated through fear and strength. What do you think? Did the Greyjoys or the Vikings rule the seas better?